Already a second time. I call the member for Heffron. I'm sure the member for Heffron doesn't need any assistance from the member for Fairfield. He will have his opportunity.
Mr Deputy, Mr Acting Speaker, this bill relates to a very significant public policy issue. The concept of political donations has plagued every democratic institution right around the world. Most countries, let alone the states of Australia, have tried to cope with the impact of political donations. Every political party to get themselves elected needs money. Every candidate that seeks to be elected needs money. I know members of this House, I know members on the other side of the House have been through since their election under pressure from their parties to be able to raise considerable sums of money for the March 2015 election, and some of them have looked in amazement as to how they can meet their party's demands to raise funds of that nature. There is immense pressure put on members of parliament and candidates to raise funds to participate in this democracy. Now, all of us who have been around for a long period of time know something about campaign donations. There are people in our communities that might believe in our political philosophies, and there are our party members in our area who will donate 10 or 50 or some of them $100. But to be donating tens of thousands of dollars, or in case of the major political parties, millions of dollars, they don't do it because they believe in our philosophy. They do it because they invariably they want something. It may not be that they want a favourable decision, it may be they just want access, or it may well be they want to rub shoulders. But you know, why should the rich have the opportunity of having access that the poor don't have? And so the reality is that anyone wants to stand in this House or any other democratic institution around the world and say that people are only donating money because they believe in their political philosophy, we know that that is nonsense. So there are attempts to try and curb it. This bill that is before the House now arises over a failure of this Parliament to enact legislation that was constitutionally valid. And it was not constitutionally valid because it sought to infringe a freedom of political communication, fortunately, that we have in this country. And it was specifically designed to impact upon the Labor Party. Now, I want to quote when this bill was debated in this House before I got in here from the member from Maroubra who said this: "The Premier should come clean and admit that this was about one thing and one thing only. This is about politics of extirpation. What he wants is simply to put to death the Labor Party in New South Wales. That is all he wants to do." And effectively, that was what was determined by the High Court when it struck down this bill and did so properly. One of the things, though, that happens when you want to pretend that you are, pretend how sanctimonious you are and you want to clean up political donations, is you expose yourself to examination. You expose yourself for examination. So at the very time the former Premier was prancing up and down the floor of this Parliament, espousing the virtues of political reform and donation, millions of dollars was going into various slush funds and being raised by the Liberal Party or various candidates in various ways. It was hypocrisy at its highest, because it is those sort of funds, undisclosed, undeclared funds, that impact upon the very democratic framework in this country or in this state. Now, as members of this House know, I'm not the one that embarks upon character assassinations of the government or members. But if you're a hypocrite, if you pretend to know, pretend to proclaim that you are reforming political donations, and you get yourself exposed in the way in which the Liberal Party has conducted itself, it is just plain hypocrisy. Now, some of those organisations that it seems from the arguments from counsel for Senator Dinos, the Liberal Party will assert were lawful for a variety of reasons, and they probably had, from those submissions you could tell, some legal advice. But what was occurring was the very thing, the very thing that legislation tries to stop, the very thing that the variety of legislation tries to control, and that is providing undeclared and undisclosed money at a pretty high rate. So the government then have the temerity, which I suppose they're forced to do, to plug a loophole in their bill as a result of their own conduct. The only problem is that the government's not competent in the way in which they do it. And I think if you have a look at Part 9, the proposed amendments to Section 26, in Clause 14, you're going to find another gaping hole that has been occasioned, again, by the lack of competence in the government. Now, as far as political, which I'll refer to in a moment, as far as political donations are concerned, I just want to make this observation. The Premier has come into this House, he has proclaimed repeatedly what he commendably said in his inaugural speech in 2007. He has indicated what his view was from the time he first became a Member of Parliament. He is now the Premier of the state. He is in a very unique position because when it comes to his belief about public funding of elections, he has the entire Labor Party to support him. He has the Labor Party not only in this House but the Labor Party in the other House. I say to the Premier, it is time for you to lead. It's time for you to use the numbers that are available in this House to achieve. Don't say how unconstitutional it is, like the member of Kiama. Have you asked the Solicitor General? You've got the Solicitor General. You've got the whole Crown solicitors. You've got the member for Cronulla's views that I will speak. I mean, go and have you looked at it? You say it's unconstitutional. Why have you tabled it? Why have you produced some sort of committee that's going to report back at the end of the year? The reason that you have done that is you're pushing the decision off. You don't want public funding of an election. You want to go to the elections in 2015 with your big, huge war chest that you have been collecting. And one of the war chests I suspect that you have relates to your failure to be able to deal with Section 26. Listen to 26(1). This Act is to operate after the commencement of the Election Funding Expenditure Disclosure Consequential Amendment Act 2014, as if the amendments made by this Act had commenced on the 18th of December 2013.
That's right, for the date of the decision.
Being the date of the High Court decision.
That's right.
What about the funds that have been donated to you from 2012 to 2013? What if Nathan Tinkler's company has donated money to you in 2012 or 2013? How is that going to be caught by this bill? Because as a result of the High Court's decision, the legislation the provisions are invalid. I want the Premier in reply to come into this House and assure this House that any money that the Liberal Party has received between 2012 and 2013, before the 18th of December 2013, is going to be caught by this bill. Because the reality of the situation is you haven't backdated it to the commencement of the bill, to the Originating Principle Act. You've backdated it only till December 2013. And that means the very restrictions in terms of corporations and caps that exist prior to that date may not apply, and you may well have stuffed up this bill just like you stuffed up the one-punch bill earlier this year. Now, the reality of the situation is this, and I say again to the Premier, you have the Labor Party here that is prepared to support you on elections, on public funding of elections. You are required to lead. This is your moment. This is your moment when you have the support of almost both houses of Parliament. You can do it now. You have an army of lawyers in the Crown Solicitor's Office. You have the Solicitor General. You have every resource available to you. There's no need to push it off to a committee. Do it yourself. What have you been doing for the last 7 years? Hasn't this been in the forefront of your mind? Isn't this something you would have said to yourself, how am I going to do it if ever I become the Premier of New South Wales? This is Mike's moment in the sun. This is when the people of New South Wales are crying out for leadership. This is the way in which you can further Nathan Rees's legacy, which he compromised with his own political career to make one of the steps towards this particular area, and now you're in a situation where you've actually got the ability to be able to deliver.
The question is that this bill be